Okay, so good morning, everyone. Um, Today is actually our last day for online session, but if you don't mind, I will just turn off my camera. But do you hear me? Hello, can anyone? Okay, because I'm using a laptop, it's a different computer, and the camera, the quality is very bad. So I decided not to use it, but it's good enough that you hear me. Okay, so there are still some topics that I want to discuss with you because they're very important in our later on when you do your design and your drafting. But don't worry, we will not have any more exercises. We will just discuss. Okay. And then after this discussion, we will talk about your final requirement, which is equivalent to your final exam. So our first topic is about reflected ceiling plan. Okay. Um, it says here that the reflected ceiling plan shows the ceiling in plan view and anything that is attached to it, such as light fixtures, sprinkler heads, visible HVAC devices, and soffits. HVAC means heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and material indications and any change in ceiling heights are also shown. So basically, anything attached to the ceiling, which means that your reflected ceiling plan should not show anything that is attached to the floor, which do not go all the way to the ceiling. Um, if you notice here in the illustration, you have a floor plan and its reflected ceiling plan. What you do not see on the ceiling plan are, of course, the door swings, although it's good to see the location of the doors because they also have bearing in the design of the ceiling. Um, any low walls that do not reach the ceiling, need not be shown in the reflected ceiling plan. No, because for example, even in the design second year design, I see that in the kitchen, for example, they still show the counters in the reflected ceiling plan, including the range and the sink, etc. Now this should not be shown anymore because they stay at the lower half of the space or the house when you cut them in two. No? So it is referred to as a reflected ceiling plan because it is the view that one would see if looking down at a mirrored floor, reflecting what is on the ceiling. So imagine the floor plan, except that the floor is made of mirror. So what you see there is uh, the ceiling, except that again, everything else which are not part of the floor of the ceiling is not reflected. So going back to this example, so the doors, I mean the tables and the chairs are not shown in the reflected ceiling plan. No? Oops. So the reflected ceiling plan is actually that simple. So I'm just going to show you some examples. Um, if you are using a ceiling board, it is best to show how the ceiling boards are laid out on the ceiling, especially if you want to control how they will be cut or how they will be centered. And especially these ceiling boards also works like modules or modular units, and they have their they have their corresponding light fixture with the same module. So it would also be good for you to indicate where you want the light fixture to be located. And then you also need to indicate, now this reflector ceiling plan, I have to point this out, shows the sink and the water closet. Now this is a mistake. Okay, so I hope you do not follow this. What is also shown is this symbol here with a vertical or a diagonal line in a square. That refers to a manhole. Okay, so in the ceiling, sometimes you put a, a manhole. It's a place where you can access the ceiling for repairs. And if the manhole, if it's possible for you to go to the manhole of one room and then go to the other room through the ceiling, then you don't need to put a manhole in all the rooms. Otherwise, if it's not possible because the walls go all of the way up, um, all separating even the ceiling, the crawl space inside the ceiling, the attic. Um, therefore, you have to put a manhole in every room. Now, this is the reflected ceiling plan is important for the electrical, especially the ones who will compute for the light requirements, because they'll have to make a layout like the one that you're saying here, the seeing here, the lighting plan. No? Then they have to compute the load, the electrical load. So this one is like a combination of a reflected ceiling plan and a lighting plan. But normally we avoid doing this because it is very complicated to look at. So we do what we did earlier, like a separate lighting plan from a reflected ceiling plan. And notice that there is always a symbol legend at the side, okay, because you're going to make your own symbols. Sometimes there are acceptable symbols or symbols which are already common, and but sometimes you need to invent a new one. It's okay to invent new symbols as long as you have a symbol legend here on the other side. So this is a sample of a symbol legend, ceiling mounted light fixture, ceiling mounted pendant light fixture, etc. So they help not only the designers but also the electrical engineers. Okay, um, and also the even in during the installation, so that the person installing the lights would know that okay, what is expected here is a hole because there's a light going to be flushed to the ceiling, or maybe there's no need for that hole, a big hole, because the light fixture will just be mounted on the ceiling, or even or it may be hanging from the ceiling. Now sometimes you need to put details, um, architectural details, like for example the what he calls here is the blackout shade, or it's like a this is drawing number 3, and you can see that somewhere here, no? So along the window, drawing number 3, and then that sheet, maybe I cannot see it very well, no? It's very small, but okay, maybe you have a light along the wall, along the side of the wall, and then you need to put the detail, construction detail. Okay, so this is something that you cannot do in floor plan, because it is found in the ceiling. So therefore, you have to put those detail markers on the ceiling plan, and then put beside it or somewhere very accessible the corresponding details. So there are many details that you have to put, especially if your ceiling is not always flat. No, if you have recessed ceiling, or if you have a very special cornice that you're going to use for the ceiling, so you have to make details of those. Now another topic is the schedules. Okay. Now, a schedule, these are convenient ways to conserve drawing space and drafting time in construction drawing because they provide detailed information that is key to the construction drawing. So, interior design construction drawings commonly include the following schedule, no? For doors, windows, finishes, kitchen equipment, furniture, millwork, and hardware. So, we try to avoid putting so many details in our plans and elevations by putting these details in a separate sheet, and we call them schedule because they are actually a group of a component like all the doors. Okay, so when we talk about all the doors, so we only see a key on the floor plan, and then we go to where that key refers us to look out to look for the details. Now, for this session, we're only going to talk about doors, windows, and finishes because the principles of doing schedules is the same for the rest, no, for kitchen equipment, furniture, millwork, and hardware. Millwork, by the way, is a term used for any wooden construction that went through some processing by machine. For example, your windows when you put molding, so all of this went to a machine. So uh, they're not assembled immediately after sewing them manually. Okay, so that's the idea of the millwork. Now, in floor plans, generic symbols can be used to represent items such as doors, windows, and floors or wall finishes. So in this case, we see that in the doors, there's a circle with a number inside. And along the windows, we see a hexagon with some letters inside. Now, this is not usually the case. You can make your own um, symbols as long as you remain consistent. Okay, but then this one for me I think is acceptable enough and simple enough. So let's start with door and window schedules. So schedules should be clear, concise, complete, and easy to read. So in order to communicate what is wanted, schedules must be specific, include all of the information needed by the builder to properly furnish the items or complete the construction. So here we have a combined door and window schedule. Okay. If you notice at the side, we have the door and window number. It's one to something. So in the previous example here, there's a different symbol for doors and different symbols for windows. But when you prefer something combined because probably the project is very small, so you can use the same symbols for doors and windows, except that they differ in terms of numbers. And then you just uh, mention here in the doors and windows type if it's a door or if it's a window, and then whether it's a window 1 or a window 2. Okay, so these are normally the information in the door and window schedule. You have the sizes and the door finish, frame finish, hardware, elevation. It's actually more complicated to combine the doors and window schedule, especially if the project is already big. That's why we have a different doors and window schedule. Um, Aside from the doors and window, the table itself, we also make the elevation of each door and window. Okay, please wait. So these are examples of elevations of the doors and windows. For a door schedule in general, Schedules are laid out in a grid format with lines preferably 1/4 inch or 6.35 mm apart and no less than 3/16 of an inch or 4.76 mm for ease of viewing. Now, this actually is very useful information when you're doing AutoCAD. Now, because when you make a table, sometimes that's the main question: how small or how big the table should be. So you should always have a standard way of making the tables. Now, AutoCAD also has if you're learning Revit, for example, it makes a table for you automatically, so that's no problem. But if you're doing it manually, like I'm not using Revit, I'm using an older version of AutoCAD because I cannot afford the license of Revit. So I always have that, no, a fixed dimension for the table, and also for the letters. It says here that lettering or font size should preferably be 1/8 inch or 3.17 millimeter, but no smaller than 3/32 inch or 2.4 millimeters. So my standard would always be. I learned this from another book that the best size for a font in AutoCAD, for example, is 3 mm, but you can go lower, but not lower than 2.5 mm. So I've been trying to follow that um, standard always when I make a when I draw in CAD. But my system in drawing in CAD is that I use the layout instead of the model tab. I use the layout tab and put the dimensions and letters there so it's consistent all throughout. But I don't know whether you already have CAD in first year. I assume you have, no? So the purpose of a door schedule is to show the type of door being used in a given opening, the type of frame, the size, including width, height, and thickness, the materials, and any other pertinent details such as type of hardware or fire rating. Now, in the Philippines, we don't really care so much about the fire rating, but in the outside, especially in the US, so this is very important. Okay, so you show the design, then you show how it's going to work. You indicate where the hinges are. For example, in this patio doors, letter A, drawing letter A. So you have this diamond shape made of hidden line or dashed line. So it's actually pointing towards the side where the hinge are supposed to be located. Okay, so that's the idea of that arrow, that like a hidden arrow. So it's pointing where the hinge is to be located. Now, like the ceiling, reflected ceiling, you also need to make details, especially about the jump, especially if you have a very complicated design for the jumps. So you need to make details. This is an example of how a detail is made, and it is key to this drawing. Okay, so you have a detail marker, and then it indicates to a drawing such as this one. So in general, you start numbering door assignments in a logical sequence so that it's easier to locate on the floor plan. Most system starts with the entry of the building. So number one, door one is always the main building. So that if I am looking at someone else's work, I would expect that the main door would be door one. Or you can also work from one side of the plan to the other, trying to place consecutive numbers or symbols where they can easily be followed. So as much as possible, don't keep on jumping. It would be better if there's a door inserted later on to to use a number like, or to use like, if it's door near door 2 and or near door 3, or in between door 2 and door 3, you can put door 2A, door 2B, 2C, instead of following the sequence of the numbers, no? So in between door 2 and 3, you might put door 100. So that will make it very difficult to locate. Title the schedule and cross-reference it to all the plans that it might be used for. Usually, only one schedule is included for multiple floors, with a note on each floor plan to see the proper sheet number to find the schedule. And make sure lettering, symbols, and line works are clear, concise, and easy to read. Okay, so this is really important in drafting. So, which is the main lesson that we're trying to learn in AD 1111. No? That everything that we do should be clear, concise, and easy to read. In terms of notation, include an abbreviation key near the schedule or reference to the sheet that explains common abbreviations, and cross-reference the schedule to any other drawing that might need clarification. So this applies to even the floor plans and elevations. And in dimensions, door dimensions can be placed directly on the floor plan in small residential projects, and most door sizes and thicknesses are indicated in the door schedule or an elevation view of the door type. Okay, so the details of the schedule, for example, I notice in some work that in the floor plan, even when the scale is big, the drawing is big, like scale 1 is to 50 or 1 is to 30, um, some student would draw the door in a lot of detail, like a door panel. It shows also the division of panels in the plan view of the door, and even put in there the dimensions. So it's not really necessary. Okay, what is expected is that there is a door schedule, and then you're supposed to see the detailed dimension in the door schedule. So the window schedule is the same. No? It includes such information as the window number or identification, mark as noted on the floor plan, the quantity required, manufacturer type, units, rough opening materials, type of glass, and finish. So those who make an estimate of the cost of the house or the project, we really appreciate the doors and windows schedule because um, an important part here is the second column, which is quantity. So they only need to multiply they only need to cost one window, then multiply it by here, how many quantities. Okay. So again, you have here model number, if in case it is something prefabricated, unit size, rough opening, and then a description of the type, the finish, the type of glass if it's different for some, and then some remarks. Okay, part of the remark may be the installation will be done by the supplier, or other remarks like arc windows, like we see here. No, if there's a wide variety of windows within a project, then elevation and section may be required to explain how they are to be installed or any special feature. Um, okay, so most of the time the elevation is enough. But there are times when you also need to show the section, and there's even a time when you need to show the elevation of the window from the outside and also from the inside. Because, for example, the sill height from is different uh, inside, because the sill height would be from the sill down to the finished floor, but in the outside it's actually from the sill down to the ground, the natural ground line. So therefore, um, that is a bigger value, no, in terms of dimension. Also, the design could be different also from inside and outside. And then, like the doors and the ceiling plan, so you need to put also the uh, details of how certain part of the windows are constructed. Because although in my example here, I did not the I took this from the book, but it did not show the detail marker. So in general, identify the windows with their appropriate symbol in a logical sequence on the floor plans. Again, so to make it easier to look for a particular window. Add a note on the floor plan or sheet index telling where window schedules can be found. In elevation view, show the direction operable window unit swing. Okay, so let's go back here. So here, again, this is not a good example because, for example, the B vestibule window, I think this is supposed to open, so you should have that hidden arrow line, no? Which forms an arrow to indicate where the hinges are located in the window. Now it can happen that the window opens upward, so therefore that arrow will be pointing up because the hinges are on the top of the window. Or it could be a hopper type where the windows actually fall down, uh, and then the hinge therefore are from the bottom. Now, if there's no indicator, that means that the window is fixed, so it cannot be opened. Now, it could also be possible that the windows is sliding. So, for example, in letter C, maybe part of the window, let's just assume that the lower part of the window slides up, then there should be an arrow indicating the direction of the slide. So there's an arrow going up. And then if the upper portion does not have an arrow, it means that it is fixed. Otherwise, it also means that it can go down. Title the schedule and cross-reference it to all plans that it might be used for. Usually, only one schedule is included for multiple floors, with a note on each floor plan to see the proper sheet number to find the schedule. Okay, to indicate, sometimes there is a note at the sides saying, okay, window schedule. But then in the Philippines, we don't really do that because in the front page, the main cover where we have the perspective and site development plan and vicinity map, we also include the an index. Okay, all the sheets and then what the sheets contain. So that's where they find that's where they locate uh, the schedules. Make sure lettering, symbols, and lines work are clear, concise, and easy to read, and draw window elevation in details where necessary, and cross-reference to the window schedule. So in terms of notation, include an abbreviation key near the schedule, and then cross-reference the schedule to any other drawings that might need clarification. The note where windows might have special materials such as tempered glass. Okay. The last is the room finish schedule. So what is this? So finish schedules are created to show in tabular form the finished materials to be applied to each wall and floor surface of a project. No, because in each room, the walls might be treated differently, or even if you're only using paint, the color might be different for each room, and then you have to indicate that in your drawing. And that is also the same for the floor. The floor might be different for each room. So the schedule is generally set up showing each room by name or number along the left side of the sheet. For example, here, uh, I think when we discussed the floor plan, I mentioned that sometimes there are numbers assigned to rooms. And for example, here, number 100 is the cashier, 101 is the tax room, 102 is the dressing room. And then uh, in this case, you have a finished floor and then the base of the floor. CPT, of course, he has a legend here for all the abbreviation. It means vinyl composite tiles. And then for the base VCB, you have the vinyl cove base. Okay. And then for the walls, of course, you have four walls. Um, if your if your wall is not if your room is not rectangular, so that makes it a bit more complicated. So you have the material and then the finishing. So in this case, GWB is 5/8 inch by X-rated gypsum wall board. and then P stands for paint. Okay, so the finishing is paint. Wainscot height refers to the rail that you see in a along the wall. Most of the time we don't have that, but sometimes the wall is divided into two parts. We have a lower part of the wall which is like the same height as the handrails or the balusters, no, and then it's treated differently. And then also the ceiling. Okay, you also need to put the uh, room finished, the finishing for the ceiling. Now, the finish schedule consists of two different parts. The main section, which is the tabular form, which we showed earlier. The second section called the legend or material key. Now, the legend or material key is simply the elevation, the room elevation, the wall elevation. We see there these notations, say P1, P2, P3, and then in principle that will show in the schedule. Now, if you're using that type of notation in the floor plan, you can have a different floor plan that shows the finishing, the finishes. So you have a floor finish plan or floor finish floor plan. But then in the reflected ceiling plan, since there's not much information in reflected ceiling plan, anyway, you can incorporate the notations for the finishing, or you can have a different ceiling finish reflected ceiling plan. There are a variety of ways to communicate what interior finishes are required for a project. Traditionally, a finish schedule is developed in tabular form, listing each room or space, the specific type of finishes that are to be applied to the floors, walls, bases, and ceilings. This is another way of showing the tabular form. Um, for me, this is more understandable because, for example, for the floor, normally you only have a few finishes that keeps repeating in every room. So you just sort of enumerate them here, and then also for the base wall, ceilings, etc. So it's easier now to, for example, if I'm a supplier or if I wanted to know where all the hardwoods will be located, so it's easier to see here that it's located in the foyer, living room, dining room, etc., etc. Only the three. Okay. In large or complex interiors, when there is more than one type of finish on each wall, or when there are other complex finish configurations, such as a tile design on a floor, a finish plan is more appropriate. Okay, we mentioned that earlier about the finish. In fact, I called it floor finish floor plan. No? But here, for example, this is partial finish plan on the third floor because partial because the floor plan is actually bigger. This is only part of it. And so you also have a legend here, finish schedule, what they mean. So this is another way. But if your plan is detailed enough, say you're using 1 is to 20 meters, you can even draw the materials and also the size, no? Especially when it comes to floor finish in terms of tiles. So you can have your own pattern of the tiles. So you have a tile symbol here. So in fact, I did this in a church restoration project because the original tile layout of the church eh, is made up of actually like 30 different kind of tiles. Okay, and then they form a certain kind of patterns. So you have to come up with a key like this of 30 different symbols and then draw them up like this, how it was supposed to be laid out. And if you notice near the door, there is like an asterisk. That's an indication of where the tile setter should start. Okay, so the first tile should be put here and everything follows. Now, that's a one way of controlling. Most of the time, it's the center of the room But otherwise, for example, in this case, he wants to control it to be the center of the doorway. Okay. Now that's basically it for the supplemental lecture. Okay. Um, so as announced earlier, we will not have an exercise related to this. These are just things that I think that did not make it almost did not make it to the semester because we ran out of time. Um, but there are things that you should learn, no? Especially for your designs later on. Now, I want to know what your plate in design. What's your plate in design one right now? Can anyone tell me what your last plate is? So pavilion. Um, wait. Okay. So what you're going to do is that what you will submit in your design class, you will also submit in my class. Okay. Uh, if you do not have a design, although I doubt it, but just in case you're not enrolled to a design class, so you'll have to make the drawings the as if you're in a design class. Okay, so pavilion. So you will be submitting the floor plan, the elevations, the section. I think one section is enough. And then the reflected ceiling plan, the roof plan. If there is a site, then a site development plan. If there's none, then uh, there's no need. I would appreciate it if you can submit to me also the problem as given by the design teacher. Okay, so the program, for example, when the problem was given to you, there is supposed to be a write up. So you include that so that I would know whether the requirement that they ask from you is complete or not. So for that project, you will be graded by your design teacher and also by me. Although my focus will not be on the design of the pavilion, but more on how you how you drew the pavilion. Okay, so um my deadline for that. When's the deadline for your design? 19th. So I guess we'll have the same deadline anyway. You're just going to submit it uh, twice, no? You're not going to draw any additional requirement. So with that, I hope to. Well, there are some of you who are asking why they still don't have grades on some projects which they submitted, although late. So I just decided to review all the other grades previously in one go because really it takes time to make grades. So during the exam week, I'll be checking on all those plates earlier. And don't worry, I'll still be putting in my remarks so that it can help you um, review your mistakes or at least see your good points. Okay, so with that, I'll be expecting your design plate or your last requirement, which serves as your final exam on the 19th. Okay, so that's it. I'll just stop the recording. And then I hope to see you all